You will get the most from any Systems to Win video when you launch it from its video homepage.
This is the 7th and final video in a 7-video series for how to use your standard work template to observe, document, and analyze any type of process. We assume that you've already entered your initial data, observed your process, documented your standard work, and you've done all the process analyses described in the 3 videos for process analysis. And now finally, you're ready to harvest the value from all that hard work that you've done. Enough with analysis. You're ready to actually improve this process. And the very first instruction is to copy the workbook. So when you're done analyzing the as-is, don't keep editing the as-is workbook. Copy that workbook to serve as the starting point for your WIP version, your work in process version. And if you follow this link, it will take you to a page that will teach you a nice clean system for document storage and naming conventions that will avoid broken hyperlinks between your related documents. And you can use that exact same system for all of your interrelated documents. Remember, Systems to Win is not just templates, not just training, but also systems for process improvement. Now, because the standard work template is so big and has so many moving parts, we recommend having a separate workbook for each version of the same process. You can, however, ignore our advice. What do we mean by that? In many or even most Systems to Win templates, it's not uncommon to use the copy sheet utility to make a copy of your as-is worksheet to serve as the starting point for your future state worksheet as a second worksheet right there alongside your as-is condition in the same workbook. But that can get a little cumbersome if you start to have more than one future state worksheet in a single workbook. So even though you can have multiple worksheets per workbook, it's often, perhaps usually, a better idea to have a separate workbook for each version of the same process. And for your standard work template, you should usually have only one standard worksheet per workbook. And this next step is by far the most valuable step in any effort to improve any process. The Japanese call it hansei, which means to reflect, ponder, think. Yes, it's amazing to me how many of my people want to rush through this part. They spent all that time choosing the right process, observing and analyzing it in detail. I mean, it took us 6 videos just to get to this point. And the whole purpose of all that hard work was to provide those team members with the information and insights that they need to apply their human intelligence to make that process better. You've done such a good job on this page of coming up with dozens of excellent questions, any one of which might hold the key to unlocking enormous potential gains within any given process, if only people would ask the right question. And this is the point in the process, after you've done all those 6 videos worth of analysis, where you can now apply any one of the tools and methods that you know how to use to apply creative countermeasures to those problems that your team has identified as root problems. And that leads us to this next section. Every lean tool needs a corresponding lean coaching system. And it's up to the leaders of your organization to establish systems for your own lean culture. And that's what we're going to focus on next, are some systems to get your people to think together better and to communicate together better. There's your standard training for how to communicate with any document author, which is useful training for how any team should communicate with any document author. There's your process improvement ideas text box, which notice that unlike the work instructions comments, which is inside the print area, this text box is outside the print area, specifically giving you a place to put anybody's great ideas whenever they come up in the process and assure them that you as the leader really will come back to their great ideas when the time is right. Now, 10 out of 10 times you have got to stabilize the process. If your process is not already stable, there's nothing to talk about. You got to do that first. If you don't know how, follow the link to online training. Now, making flow visible is only important if you have chosen to be on a lean journey to lean transformation. Not everyone chooses that. If you do, however, care about lean flow, then the single most important test for flow is the acid test for visibility of flow. You ask someone unfamiliar in the work area to stand on your clearly marked observation point and you ask them, is this process flowing as expected? Their answer should be yes or no, red or green. They've never seen this before. They should be able to answer it based on your visuals. If you care about lean flow, don't skip the acid test. Now, on your future state workbook, you're almost always going to be rebalancing operator loads and moving people around or adding new processes. So use what you learned in the new user training before you ever started using any Systems Twin template. It's almost always a bad idea to insert rows. Instead, you want to copy a similar blank row using insert copied cells. Or similarly, let's say that we want to move these 3 steps. Then after selecting the entire rows, not partial rows, I use Control X to cut those rows. And then I select the row above where I want to move those rows. And then I don't use paste like an amateur would. I right-click, insert, cut cells. And that's the right way to move entire rows or columns. Now remember, in our new user training, we had said that was the single most important Excel skill that you would ever learn. So if you've forgotten it or need a refresher, go back, study that video again. Another common thing that you'll be doing with your future state is reducing changeover setup times. So there are 2 things that you'll commonly need to do with your template as part of SMED setup reduction. One thing you'll look for is opportunities to change internal setups to external, and just rewriting the words in the text doesn't do it. We need to select this first operator cell, and then in the formula bar, we need to change that operator number to a -1, which will appear as an X for external operator. And the other thing that we look for is opportunities to change the frequency of some activities from the run cycle or blank, which is the same as every run cycle, to some frequency other than blank or run cycle. In this case, let's say that maybe this activity could be done every batch rather than every item. And remember that when we select the Systems Twin tab and click the button to chart operators, notice that things that are done by external operators or things that are done on a frequency other than every run cycle will still show up as line items, but they won't be charted. They won't be included as part of the run cycle. And remember, that's the whole point of SMED setup reduction, is we're trying to reduce the run cycle. If you're doing SMED setup reduction, you might want to restudy that training and that video again. Make sure you got it. And when you're done improving your process, one of the last things you'll do is you usually want to chart your improved process. Clicking that button again. Then use your RevLog sheet, not only in this workbook, but in all those related documents that you need to keep in sync that are describing different aspects of the same process. Then you'll publish your standardized work instructions, ideally printing them, putting them on your team accountability board and talking about them on your weekly stand-up meetings or daily stand-up meetings. If you publish as a PDF, if you forgot how to do it, there's the online training to remind you. And then, of course, there was absolutely no point in doing any of this if your people just backslide into doing things their own way anyway. So your next step is you got to actually train people to do things the new way. Remember, standard work template was never intended to be a training tool. So there's all kinds of other tools that you can use and methods for training your people, and then auditing to make sure people are actually doing it the way you thought they were doing it.